It's up to this government. How long does strike last?
Let's go.
Now, we mentioned all those services. I'm wondering as
Yeah.
well how your own members are feeling right now. Going on strike will also hurt their household incomes. A strike pay barely pays for food for a family in a single day. So how are your members feeling right now?
Michael, why don't I ask that question to the members are here? The question is, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling today?
That was a good move. That was a good move. It's a good answer. Show me solidarity. It's a wonderful day in the homiehood. A wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? Canada is in its biggest strike in decades because federal workers have finally, after 2 years of negotiation, hit the picket line in Ottawa. And this is, of course, really exciting news because the labor movement in Canada is famously very, very weak. So the Breach Media, which is a great journalist outlet, has published an article here. I haven't read it, so that means we're going to read it together. As the cost of living soars for all, federal workers are fighting back. In the face of likely back-to-work legislation, public servants are on a historic strike for better wages and to defend public services. So, of course, this is going to be something that might last a little while. We hope that the best way to end this would be for the government to essentially cave and start paying people what they deserve, paying people a living wage, allowing them to work in the way that they want to work. But we don't actually know if that's going to happen. However, it is encouraging just to know that there is a group of workers in Canada who are essentially going to fight for their rights, their right to get paid a living wage. As we all know, during these difficult times, our dollars are not going as far as they did, and we still have to work just as far to earn those dollars. So wouldn't it only make sense that we earn more for the same amount of labor that we're doing? Because the only point of making our money is so that we can buy the things that we need, like food and eggs and milk, and pay for our bills, So I personally think that we should all make more money to help us deal with this inflation. However, all of my forms of income have essentially remained the same. And I think a lot of people at the federal level are probably feeling that way as well. So, wages that don't keep up with inflation, creeping privatization that threatens job security, and managers who force workers back to the office despite their having worked effectively at home over the pandemic. These issues over which federal workers are now on strike will sound familiar to all Canadians. Because we're all going through this together, essentially, and it's really difficult. Life is hard. I don't know if you've looked around lately, but life is kind of getting hard, isn't it? Which is also why it's shocking to hear people who get angry when workers are simply standing up for their ability to collectively bargain, which is one of our fundamental human rights here in Canada. So the Public Service Alliance of Canada's PSAC strike that began on Wednesday is one of the largest in Canadian history. More than 155,000 of the union's members, including food inspectors, firefighters, custodians, clerics, cooks, hospital workers, and frontline administrators, have walked off the job. It is also nice. I mean, obviously, these are all part of a similar union, but it is nice to see how this stretches across multiple industries and services. This is the first time in more than 3 decades that PSAC members have been pushed to strike at the national level. This diverse coalition of workers and those in solidarity with them are now standing tall at picket lines across the country to demand better from an unreasonable boss, Canada's federal government. At a time when cost of living is skyrocketing and public services like hospital care in Ontario are being handed over to private companies, PSAC's fight has meaning and urgency for the entire country. Yeah, that is the other thing too. Like if you're paying a disproportionate number of taxes and the services that you expect in return, like getting care when you're sick, are essentially being turned over to people who already have more than their share of the money, rich people who can afford to start and operate these private companies. That kind of seems like absolute bullshit as well. So I've seen this dude in a couple videos, a couple pictures. If you know who this dude is, let me know, because I kind of want to message him, not just because we have similar facial hair status, but I think it would be cool to talk to somebody on the stream about this specific issue in the near future, assuming the strike keeps going. We'll see, though. Of the issues uniting these workers to fight back against their employer, the foremost is wages. Despite an affordability crisis, the federal government is offering PSAC members an average wage increase of just 2% per year. An effective wage cut, given the current rate of inflation, is at 4.3%. And yeah, that is the other thing that's so frustrating. Like, if you're not keeping pace with inflation, then you are effectively just getting a pay cut. Everybody thinks federal public sector workers are making six figures, PSAC President Chris Alward told a picket line in Ottawa on Wednesday. So Chris Alward is this gentleman over here on the left. He's an old-looking socialist guy, basically exactly who you would kind of expect to be the spokesperson on behalf of a union. So he says that the majority of PSAC members make between $40,000 and $65,000 a year. So really not six figures, not even close. When this government represses wages of its own employees, what it's doing is repressing wages for all workers right across the country. And here's a video of him speaking. You know what? Let's actually get back to this after reading the article. Another issue uniting members is pushing back against contracting out and privatization in the federal public service. These practices decrease job security for public servants and cast a shadow over government decision making. Controversy has erupted over the cozy relationship between the Liberal government and McKinsey, the world's most secretive and powerful consultancy firm. Wow, that makes them sound super spooky. The world's most secretive and powerful consultancy firm. Where does this lead us here? Okay, I guess I need to learn a little bit more about that. I find these liberal scandals like really boring and hard to kind of keep up with because there's so many. Which has advised opioid manufacturers, tobacco and oil companies, and authoritarian regimes across the globe. Okay, so, that sounds pretty evil to me. McKinsey, which frequently advocates for downsizing workforces and privatizing the public sector, has received almost $120 million in contracts from Canada's federal government since 2015. So, we do talk about this kind of often on this channel as well, that the government needs to outsource all of these services because they are not robust enough to fulfill them internally. And that ends up costing taxpayers a hell of a lot more. And of course, it leads to all these scandals. Something the conservatives are always pointing out is like, I can't believe this corporation got part of this outsourced package and they got all this money. And it's like, okay, but also those same conservatives are advocating for the government to be smaller. And when our government is smaller, then it's less capable of doing those things that you say shouldn't be outsourced. So how do you want it? Which way do you want it? And you can't kind of have it both ways. McKinsey is not the only government-caused controversy impacting federal workers. They have also had to deal with ongoing frustrations related to the government's notorious Phoenix Pay system. The system provided by IBM and originally introduced by former Prime Minister Stephen Harper's government has underpaid, overpaid, or not paid more than half of the federal public service workforce. What? It creates stress, anxiety, and uncertainty for hundreds of thousands of federal workers stuck in limbo. Members want to be able to move on from this nightmare, but the federal government continues to drag its feet fixing the mess. Okay, that sounds horrible. Like, if your pay is not reliable, and imagine what a pain in the ass it is to even get like overpaid by your boss, and then your boss has to come to you and be like, hey, sorry, we overpaid you, which means we're going to underpay you next time, which means like we have to talk about it now and you have to go to HR and fill out some paperwork or so. It's just like, what a pain in the ass. But of course, even getting underpaid is going to be like much worse, obviously, and getting not paid at all, obviously, worst case scenario. The union is also calling for mandatory training to address systemic racism, discrimination, and harassment in the workplace. I mean, that seems pretty obvious, like something that should pretty much be going on in every workplace. But especially, you think the federal government has rejected this proposal. That's pretty pathetic. Despite an internal government survey that found more than half of respondents weren't satisfied with how complaints about racism were resolved, the government still says that the current resources available to employees are enough. And I mean, you get this reaction all the time from people who are in power. They'll be like, but look, we already have a system to address this, and that system is usually always inadequate. And it's like, yeah, maybe we could do more. And maybe we should do more. And maybe the government should be a leader in this particular instance of people facing systemic racism or sexism in the workplace. Why not? This response is emblematic of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government, which too often strikes an anti-racist pose without any intention of doing real work to address systemic racism, of course. And the Conservatives will point to Justin Trudeau and be like, wow, I can't believe this woke government, woke. And it's like, okay, but can we please just look at the material conditions and see if they're actually as woke as you say? And if they're not, why don't we simply improve them? And like, why does having to address inadequacies, I want to say, or just like injustices in the workplace, why does addressing them have to be woke? Like, why, like, shouldn't everyone feel comfortable and respected in their workplace and be getting paid the same as their equals? Lastly, securing the right to remote work is a key issue for many striking members. When the pandemic hit, hundreds of thousands of public servants were directed to shift their entire work life into their homes. This often required purchasing office equipment, dedicating part of their home to work, and sometimes even moving out of the city core so they had space to work. These workers proved that they could work effectively from home and continued to deliver much-needed federal programs to Canadians over the course of the pandemic. Despite this, the government has unilaterally imposed a return to work policy requiring workers to come into the office 2 to 3 days a week. They have justified the policy by saying that working together in person supports collaboration, team spirit, innovation, and a culture of belonging. I really hate this garbage. It makes it seem like people do work so that they can have a culture of belonging. No, people do work for the money. I don't care about having a culture of belonging in my workplace. I mean, I do actually, and it's nice, but it's also not like an office job. And also, you can still have a culture of belonging and do your work online. I would say that in our stream, I hope to facilitate a culture of belonging. And it has, we're doing some of these segments, this work together. And we have a culture of belonging. If only we were getting paid by the government of Canada. We could have an even stronger culture of belonging. This mushy appeal to the importance of team spirit, I hate. If anyone is trying to sell you team spirit in order to like do your work, it's a scam. Run. This mushy appeal to the importance of team spirit is a cover for their real reason. They want more control over their employees. And that's what it is. And it's so frustrating because obviously these workers have proven that they can do their work in the comfort of their own homes. And there's nothing wrong with that. People will do the same amount of work in 6 hours as at home as they need to get paid, as they can do in like 8 hours in the office. It's like, if you give me 6 hours, I'll do the work. If you give me 8 hours, I'll do the exact same amount of work. It'll just take me 2 hours longer. And I'll spend that extra 2 hours either procrastinating, looking at Twitch, messaging my family and friends. It's just like, just let me work as efficiently as I can when I can. As long as I'm doing my work, I should be getting paid, right? Like that is the goal of having an employee, is because you want them to do the work. And if they're doing the work, just pay them what they deserve. That's the other side of needing to get back to work. They don't want to pay for empty offices. Right. Yes. And I do wonder if they'll touch on that here. As economist Adam D.K. King has noted, remote work is a site of struggle in the fight for control over workers' autonomy. The strength of an employer's grip in the workplace is commensurate with the worker's lack of freedom. Any gain in autonomy for the worker is a loss of power for the boss. In this way, PSAC members' fight to secure the right to remote work connects with the broader labor movement's struggle to win more autonomy for workers. I really like this framing here too, like that they're saying it's more than about office space. It's literally just about control. Right. And I think they are right in a way that if these federal workers were able to have increased autonomy over their lives, then that would be a threat to the power of the thumb that gets pressed upon all of us. Right. Like if federal workers are able to work from home and make that part of their contract, then other office employees will be like, hey, how come we can't have that? I can do my work from home. I want to do my work from home, and I'm being forced to come into the office. And they have that. How come I can't have that? So it's unclear how heavy-handed the federal government's next moves will be. Liberals claim to respect workers, yet they have repeatedly used back-to-work legislation to undermine their ability to go on strike. In 2018, faced with the supposed emergency of a Canadian Union of Postal Workers strike, they legislated them back to work. The Liberals did the same thing when the port workers of Montreal went on strike in 2021, despite the fact that in 2015, the Supreme Court ruled that workers had a constitutional right to strike. And we see this theme all the time. We just did this during the CUPE strike in Ontario, that Doug Ford did back-to-work legislation that fell on its face and almost created the climate for a general strike, which I'm sad that we didn't have. So, I guess if I'm part of the union, if I'm one of the union leaders, I'm basically like in a position where I'm like, all right, bring it on. Bring on the legislation, because they have to fight till the bitter end, like that's how you win these things. Over the last 70 years, federal and provincial governments have used this legislative tool to end over 147 labor conflicts, the most recent being Ontario Premier Doug Ford's attempt to force the province's education workers back to their jobs. As the leader of a minority government, Trudeau would need the support of either the New Democrats or Conservatives to pass back-to-work legislation. Now, this would be really interesting because the Conservatives have basically been doing Trudeau bad this entire time. So for them to actually flip the script on something and basically come out in support of the Liberals, that would be absolutely shocking. And if what Jagmeet Singh says is true, then that would basically be their only option. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has said unequivocally that he will not support the Liberals if they table such legislation. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre has kept quiet so far, but he has a well-known history of attacking workers' rights. Curious where this link leads. Press progress. Pierre Poilievre claims he's a friend of the working class. He spent years attacking Canadian workers. Yeah, I mean, he's a conservative. What do you want him to do? When it comes to workers asserting their rights, more unites the Liberals and Conservatives than divides them. I'm also happy to see this framing because I feel like we just don't get enough of it in mainstream media, where it's like, hey, the Liberals are basically like red conservatives and the Conservatives are blue Liberals. But since there's this supply and confidence agreement with the NDP and Liberals, we get more of that framing, that the Liberals and the NDP are the same. But ideologically, I do think that the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party are more similar. Trudeau's desire to force public servants back to work without a fair deal may be enough that he will partner with Poilievre, a man who has built his brand by insulting Trudeau. Similarly, Poilievre's animosity toward workers may be so strong that he would help Trudeau pass this legislation. Honestly, I think I would be shocked to see Poilievre support Trudeau in any way at this point. Public servants, part of a broader fight. And this is one of the frustrating things about solidarity when it comes to unions and it comes to labor movements like this one, is that you'll just have so many people on Twitter who are just like, oh, well, I had to go to work today. And it's like, well, yeah, but I mean, have you considered talking to your coworkers and organizing a strike so that you could collectively bargain for, a better deal? Why not? It's literally that meme I posted yesterday. Lol. Is it in the Discord? Which one? Let's see. This one? I don't think it's this one, but this one does apply. This is the people who are basically on Twitter. They're just like wage, slave, and proud. Oh yeah, here we go. Fuck Trudeau over, or fuck over union workers. Pierre Poilievre sweats. Yeah, and it really is that it's kind of interesting that he hasn't said anything yet, and we don't really know where his allegiance lies on these issues. Well, we if I had to guess, I would say that he's gonna walk the line. He's going to point his finger at Trudeau and say, "This is what you get under a Justin Trudeau government. But we're going to bring it home." And then everyone's going to be like, wait. What do you mean you're going to bring it home? Does that mean you don't, you support these workers getting a better deal? And then and that will be it. And then we'll be like, nope, I'm not answering any questions, but this is definitely Justin Trudeau's fault. And that's all we'll get. Wages have failed to keep up with the rising cost of living, not only for federal public servants, but for workers everywhere. In contract negotiations spanning the country, workers have had to fight employers tooth and nail for every cent they deserve. Even the Ontario education workers, who led a historic mass mobilization to overturn anti-work legislation this fall, still only managed to win a 3.6% wage increase per year. This increase is more than any other public sector union has been able to negotiate with the Ontario government, and it still falls below inflation. I know, and this is what is so, it was so heartbreaking to see the Ontario strike end in this way. And it's like, okay, so the best you could get was still a loss. That sucks. It really goes to show how little power we have as the working class. Privatization continues to spread across the public sector, from the program administrator who's replaced by a McKinsey consultant to the nurse who's pressured to leave their hospital for a private surgery clinic. The expansion of for-profit businesses into every area of our lives only worsens working conditions and social outcomes for the working class. And bosses everywhere, from the federal government to Elon Musk, order their employees back to the office in an attempt to decrease worker autonomy. For the employers of the world, the fact that their employees are producing what's asked of them is not enough. They also require control over where their employees work, when they work, and what they wear to work. What they wear to work? I mean, that is true. That is part of the reason they don't want you working from home. They're like, you must wear pants. We know you're still wearing your pajama bottoms, but it's of the utmost concern to us that you wear pants. It's like, Jesus Christ. Enough is enough. Okay, we need to stop saying enough is enough. God damn it. The breach site is so sensitive. Look, if you just go the slightest bit up. Here we go. Oh wait, no. Okay, there. Oh no, now it's making a fool of me. Anyways, we need to stop saying enough is enough. Enough is enough with the enough is enough. Am I right? Because I mean, literally, it's Mark Saunders' campaign slogan, and also it was like an alt-right slogan during the pandemic measures. So enough is enough. While the politicians scheme behind the scenes, it's crucial that striking PSAC members know that public support is behind them as they continue to fight for a contract at the negotiation table. The recent strike by the Ontario education workers showed how decisive this public support can be in forcing the government's hand. That is true. It felt like there was a lot of strong support for CUPE. And actually that's why it also made it so hard, because it felt like there was going to be a general strike in a couple days and then they caved. And that really hurt me in my socialist soul. Basta y basta is a Spanish leftist saying. It means enough is enough. Okay. Well then, stop stealing our slogans, all right? The right steady be taking everything that we create. We're much better at branding on the left, I have to say, but then the right hijacks it. As the industrial workers of the world rightly asserted more than 100 years ago, an injury to one is an injury to all. The sentiment has never been more relevant than it is today. In the United Kingdom, workers have come together through the Enough is Enough campaign, which has in turn energized the launch of Ontario's own version of this campaign. In France, unions have organized massive general strikes over the raising of the pension age. Just a random fact. We don't have to say it. Well, it sounds like they're saying it in the UK. So yeah, I guess, all right, let's reclaim it. Let's take it back. PSAC members are joining this international chorus of workers. They are on the picket lines fighting for fair wages and worker autonomy and against racism, discrimination, and privatization in the workplace. As the strike continues, it is incumbent on people to support the struggle in whatever way they can, whether that means posting a selfie, calling a member of parliament, or joining the picket line. PSAC members' issues are workers' issues, and a win for them could be a win for the entire working class. Hey, I like this. Posting a selfie? Yes. Oi, Poloi, what are you waiting for? You could, instead of asking, posting a selfie, question mark, you could be taking a selfie and posting it right now. And here you are not acting in solidarity with the working class by asking me this question. But seriously, what the hell are they talking about? Fight the cost of living crisis? All workers deserve real wages increase. Okay, they need to just explain this in the article. I'm not going to run through a PDF to understand why I need to post a selfie. Jeez. All right. So let's take a moment here and look at this. Oh, I believe it's right here. It's a 40-second video with PSAC President Chris Alward talking his shit on the picket line.
Look, our wage demand has always been so that we can keep up or keep in line with the rate of inflation. Workers in this country are fed up, they're frustrated, and rightfully so. Everybody wants to pay workers nothing, but yet we sit back and we watch corporations make record profits. We're being gouged in grocery stores, we're being gouged in the gas pumps, but yet everybody wants to repress the workers' wages. When this government represses its wages on its own employees, what it's doing is repressing wages for all workers right across the country. Workers in this country are fed up, and they deserve a fair and decent wage increase, and that is no different with federal public sector employees as well. Look,
you know, I think it would be more in solidarity if you didn't start the chant in the middle of his speech. But I appreciate what's going on, you know. We also got this interview here, I believe, with this is from that same event, and now this is on CPAC. Let's take a look here.
Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. More than 100,000 federal government workers went on strike today.
This is Michael Serapio. He's a Homo Serapian. That sounds really weird. It's funny that PP isn't coming out and saying anything in favor of workers or Trudeau. Yeah, you know, that is his silence is golden in this case, I think.
Making good on their promise to hit the picket lines if a tentative deal with Ottawa was not achieved by 9 p.m. Eastern last night. Well, that deadline came and went, and now services across the country will be affected. Passports, tax returns, immigration, and visa applications.
Again, if you know this guy with the megaphone, I feel like we need to get him on stream.
Just to name a few, as workers set up pickets in 250 locations across the country today, including Parliament Hill.
When I say Mona Forte, you say, we want a contract. Mona Forte! We want a contract! Mona Forte! We want a contract!
It's nice. It's nice when the guy with the megaphone has rhythm. So often some of those chants fall on their face a little bit. But that I was like, is that going to work? But it worked out.
Joining us now is the National President for the Public Service Alliance of Canada, Chris Aylward. Thank you for joining us again.
My pleasure to be here, Michael. Thank you.
Listen, I want to begin with a very simple question. Is this strike really necessary? You say that you're still willing to negotiate, so why shut down government services if talks are still possible?
Yeah.
Is this really necessary? And what is he going to say here? He's like, actually, Chris, now that you put it like that, maybe it's not.
Michael, we've been at the bargaining table for almost 2 years. Treasury Board has been dragging its feet for 2 years. Finally, in the last 2 weeks, Treasury Board has come to the table and started negotiating. They could have done that a year and a half ago. They could have done that 6 months ago. Why did they wait until our deadline for a strike was fast approaching? That was absolutely not necessary.
Now with the Treasury Board.
Nice. I like that. Very strong. And pointing out some of like where their intentions are on the other side.
And of course, you have support behind you there. Now, the Treasury Board says it has raised its wage offer higher than where it began and in what they are offering. And this is what they are saying. They state they are respecting your workers and at the same time respecting what Canadians can afford to pay. What's your reaction to that?
Look, our wage demand has always been so that we can keep up or keep in line with the rate of inflation. Workers in this country are fed up, they're frustrated, and rightfully so. Everybody wants to pay workers nothing, but yet we sit back and we watch corporations make record profits. We're being gouged in grocery store aisles, we're being gouged in the gas pumps, but yet everybody wants to repress the workers' wages. When this government represses its wages on its own employees, what it's doing is repressing wages for all workers right across the country. Workers in this country are fed up and they deserve a fair and decent wage increase, and that is no different with federal public sector employees as well.
How do you justify that? Carry that argument a bit more. How is this fight that you are currently engaged in with the federal government, how does that affect people across this country who are not public service workers?
Because whatever happens at the federal level, Mike, and we've seen this, normally, will trickle down provincially, territorially.
He shouldn't say trickle down. That doesn't sound good.
And private sectors, employers as well. If this government continues to offer like nothing at the bargaining table.
I would prefer, instead of saying trickle down, say spread like wildfire.
For our members, every employer in the country is going to feel, oh, the federal government didn't give their employees nothing. We don't have to give our employees nothing either. If this government believes, as they say, they believe in workers, they'll come to the bargaining table and they'd set that bar for all workers across the country.
Okay, but you know...
Let's go. The man knows how to speak.
To hear it from the Treasury Board, though, they make the argument very plainly that what you're asking for is not affordable. And if they agree to what you're asking for, it would severely affect the government's ability to deliver services to Canadians. What do you say to that?
You know what's not affordable, Michael? Groceries.
Our members have been delivering services to Canadians in a very quality way. This government is on record as saying we have a world-class public service. Well, if that's true and you believe that and we believe that, then come to the bargaining table and show us that. Standing up in the House of Commons and making comments about the great work of the federal public service, that's no good for our members. Our members can't bring that to the bank. We need a fair and decent wage offer, no different than any other worker in this country. Everybody thinks federal...
Hey, yo, what's up? VB, how you doing? Welcome to our stream. We're a Canadian news and politics stream, and sometimes we have fun as well.
Public sector workers are making six figures. The majority of PSAC members make between $40,000 and $65,000 a year. They're not senior executive pay. And at $40,000 to $65,000 a year can hardly have another rollback hit, and that's what this government is proposing.
And I've heard you use that number
Let's go. Let's go. Hello, comrade. Comrade from Brazil. What's going on?
before, and I know you say it's the majority. What percentage of your workers are actually making that amount?
The vast majority of our, yes, we have members who make more than $65,000 a year, but the vast majority, the biggest percentage of our membership are between $40,000 and $65,000 a year. Again,
That really does not seem like a lot for a public service sector employee. I kind of was under the impression that people working for the federal government would make upwards of like $80,000. Hearing that it's between 40 and 65 is actually shocking.
and a salary that can't suffer another rollback.
But you know, Canadians who hear this and might feel some sympathy, they're also facing some very severe disruptions now. How do you explain going on strike when the kinds of concessions...
Oh, I hate when they ask these questions, man. It's just like, well, what about the inconvenience to your fellow working class peoples? It's like, well, tell them to get the hell out here. You know, like if they want this resolved quicker, then they should not be out there on the picket line with them.
that you're asking for, or at the very least, the strike will affect things like passport services, crossing at the border, immigration services, tax returns. How do
Also, they have deemed some services essential, so not everything is being cut.
you justify that to Canadians who are now wondering what this impact's going to be on them?
You're absolutely right, Michael. Everything that you just listed, our members do all of that work. It's up to the government to make sure that this strike doesn't last long and Canadians are not impacted. They know what they need to do. Come to the bargaining table. Let's do this. Let's get this done for everyone, including federal public sector members.
Now, will you be doing
That was a good answer. Good answer.
anything to minimize
This is like Family Feud, you know? It's like, good answer, good answer.
the impact on Canadians?
Well, I mean, here we are today on Parliament Hill. We have members at Tunney's Pasture here in Ottawa, spread out. We're not taking over the streets. We're not shutting down airports or borders yet. We're not inconveniencing the public today. We're here on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. The public don't care about us being up here. We're not inconveniencing the public by being on Parliament Hill. And that is our strategy. We have strategic picket lines right across the country. And as I said, we haven't, set up picket lines at airports or borders or anything like that to inconvenience the public. But the longer we're out, the public are going to see more and more inconvenience. We don't want to do that. It's up to this government how long this strike lasts.
Let's go.
Now, we mentioned all those services. I'm wondering as well how your own members are feeling right now. Going on strike will also hurt their household incomes. A strike pay barely pays for food for a family in a single day. So how are your members feeling right now?
Michael, why don't I ask that question to the members are here? The question is, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling today?
That was a good move. That was a good move. It's a good answer. Show me solidarity.
Chris, I need to also ask.
Michael, So, Michael, our members are out today. We don't want to be on strike, but we know this is the only tool we have left in our toolbox to basically get this government to come to the table with an offer that's fair and decent. We're continuing the discussions at the bargaining table. We're still hopeful. I mean, our goal from day one, even when we announced the strike results, we said from day one, our goal was to get to a tentative agreement. Our goal wasn't to go on strike. Nobody wants to be out here. Here we are.
Now, I know there were a number of issues that were outstanding in terms of trying to come up with some type of tentative agreement. But given what we have just shared with each other right now, is it fair to say that this comes down to wages and money?
Wait, what? Of course it comes down to money.
Certainly, again, we didn't hide that fact. We said from day
So some people have accused you of simply doing the work for the money. Is this true?
one, wages were the priority in this round of bargaining. In the economic context that we're in, everyone in this country is feeling the pinch. Federal public sector workers making $40,000 to $65,000 a year are no different. And again, we're fed up. We're watching mega corporations make record profits that they haven't seen in years, and yet nobody wants to pay workers. That doesn't compute. Something has to give there. And as a result, that's what you're seeing today. Workers are fed up, they're frustrated, and they're on strike.
Listen, Chris, I know this is day one, but the NDP has already gone public. They say that they would never support back-to-work legislation.
Currently, at the time of recording this, we're on day 3. But I feel like the energy, you can sense the energy here.
What do you say to any politician of any political stripe who might be thinking about that route as a possible solution to this?
I would ask every member of Parliament in the House of Commons to support workers' right to strike and to vote against any back-to-work legislation if it's introduced. The good thing is we haven't heard that yet, and we're hoping that we're not going to hear that from this government. A government who's committed to bring in anti-scab legislation, we sure hope they're not going to pull the trigger on back-to-work legislation.
Chris Aylward, thank you very much for the time.
All right. And then they go on to interview Mona Fortier, who is the other person relevant, the Treasury Board President, who's part of these negotiations on the other side. But, you know, that's really boring, and we don't need to get into that. The important thing, I think, is to really just like be in solidarity with these workers. And when they said, hey, what should people do if they're frustrated that these services are not being met? Honestly, I think the thing that we can do to support is donate to the union, because that, as they say, that union pay is not enough and it's going to run out probably way too quick. So I feel inspired after seeing that interview to make a small donation, affordable donation. I would call my MP, except my MP and MPP are both pretty useless when it comes to just about anything. But you know, depending on where you are, maybe that is a good strategy. I would say, especially if you're you have a Liberal or NDP MP, or depending on your Conservative MP. My Conservative MP sucks and doesn't do very much, but you know, it might be worth getting in touch. Even if your MP sucks like mine, it probably is worth making that phone call. And you know, if they at least keep track of those numbers. So solidarity with PSAC, and let's go Canada. Let's fight for the rights of workers everywhere. Why not make sure you don't miss the next video by liking, commenting, subscribing, and ringing the bell? Thank you so much for watching. It's my homie 2 Taro. Peace.